Hello, ladies and gentlemen, Christoph the Polish Geek, and November 5th. So yes, today in the United States, it's the election day, and my channel is generally politics free. It's kind of unavoidable to talk politics for such a big time, but all I will say is that either way, whoever wins, it's going to be a huge mess. Either way, and people are going to argue with each other and harass each other online. Either way, whoever wins. But all I will say on that is, and that will be my final word on it, is that I don't care if you're an American who you vote for. I don't care. If you vote for Trump, awesome, your choice. And if you vote for Harris, fine, also your choice. Again, I don't care either way who you're voting for. It's your free choice as an American, and all I will say is that I love you either way, as long as you're a good person. That's all that matters to me. But now, let's stop talking politics, because this subject will bring nothing but division. And instead, welcome to another movie review, and I'm reviewing the third Venom movie, Venom: The Last Dance. And the first two Venom movies, when I first watched the first Venom movie, I was actually somehow entertained by this movie, and I thought it was a lot of fun and all that. I love how violent it was and dark. And then Venom: Let There Be Carnage came out. I saw it and then rewatched the first movie, and then I only realized how truly awful both movies really were. I don't know why I was so entertained when I first watched the first movie, but either way, neither of those two movies is good. And Venom: The Last Dance, I say, is the best of the three, but that doesn't say much, because again, it's not a high bar, because first two were awful. So Venom: The Last Dance being the best of the three is not really a high bar to clear, because it's still certainly not a particularly good movie. It suffers certainly from a lot of problems that the first two movies already suffered. One of the many problems of the first two movies was that the humor in the movie was practically completely unfunny and completely doesn't fit with the character of Venom. But that admittedly goes kind of the far bigger problem in general that I think that all three of those movies have, and that's unavoidable. I just don't think Venom is the right character to do a solo movie. I think Venom, for me at least, works much better as a villain to Spider-Man, and I admit, I used to want to see an MCU iteration of him. Don't know if this is possible now, although considering the after credits scene in No Way Home, I wouldn't be surprised if that actually happened, but still, again, I don't think Venom is a protagonist character material. Again, I just think he works much better as an antagonist of Spider-Man, but that's an inherent problem of all three movies that's unavoidable, since after all it's a Venom movie. But again, as I already said, the humor completely isn't funny and doesn't fit with the character one bit, and also the pace is just too fast, and some characters that are actually somewhat interesting in this movie are introduced, but then they quickly get abandoned in favor of rushing the plot, and then the plenty of action scenes are just still pretty bad, and as well as almost all of the CGI is also pretty crappy. But what does this movie have that the first two even don't have? I say the characters are at least somewhat more likable, and I admit there were some newly introduced characters I kind of was actually interested in, if I'm being honest. And so yes, this is what this movie has as the first act. Although, again, as I just said, it doesn't make a movie great or even particularly good, just better than the first two, which again isn't a high bar, because first two are awful. One of the things I have to talk about in this movie that's sort of actually both a positive and a negative is that, as actually has been said, the movie very much serves as a conclusion to the Venom trilogy, and also very much as an introduction of Null, a god of the symbiotes. And I admit, I've never read the comics, so can't say I'm particularly familiar about him, although I did make some research after seeing the movie, and I have to say, when it comes to Null's physical look, I thought it was excellent. It was straight out from the comic. Again, I haven't read the comics about him, but again, I did make research and saw what he looks like, so when it comes at least to his physical look, I thought they nailed that part completely right. But it also goes to one of the major problems of the movie, that it doesn't even have a central villain, because sure, you can make an argument Null is a villain, but he's so much in the background. I actually expected that he would actually show up at the end of the movie for the final battle, but again, after making more research about him, I realized that it would be pretty unrealistic, considering that who knows, maybe they actually want to make many years waiting for final battle with him, kind of how they did with Thanos. Who knows? But then again, considering that none of those three movies are particularly good, I mean, first two are terrible, and this one isn't particularly good either. Like, it's hard to really be excited for what they do with Null, even if he was actually one of the few good parts in the movie. But again, he was so much in the background that it does feel like you could say he was wasted. That, again, I've been repeating it. It's only an introduction to him, and it's obvious that they have huge plans for him, but at the same time, it's just hard to care. And when I said that this movie lacks a central villain, because sure, you can make an argument Null is a villain, but as I already said, he's mostly in the background, so it's mostly just like those beasts that he sends after the symbiotes that really are the villains, but they can't really be considered villains. They're just like mindless beasts that have to easily be defeated. Like, hardly they could even be considered villains. In fact, I'm going to even argue that even the shark from Jaws is actually way more of a villain than these beasts. And you know what else? This problem could very easily be fixed. Like, it could easily have a more prominent villain by maybe having a field commander who like controls those beasts, or maybe some just like another more powerful symbiote that leads those beasts on Earth, and maybe in the beginning of the movie actually show us Null interacting with that hypothetical field commander, and then the field commander mostly being the one that leads those beasts and give him some interesting personality, and voila, you actually have an actual villain, because again, Null is mostly in the background, so yeah, a silly problem that could easily be fixed. Oh well. And now another thing about the movie that somewhat makes it better from the first two predecessors is the supporting cast is actually quite interesting. Like Eddie Brock and Venom, they actually meet a hippie family camping, and they befriended family, and I have to say, like, consisting of a husband, a wife, and two kids, and I have to say, they were actually somewhat interested, and I did actually like their interactions with Eddie and Venom, and I was pretty interested in where their story was going, and in all honesty, I have to say, I was actually pretty happy with their overall character arc, although, again, I really wish we spent more time with them, because they were actually some of the more interesting characters in the movie. And another character that was also quite interesting, but it's another perfect example of a completely wasted potential, is this military general Rex Strickland. And at first he comes off like one of those like evil military guy that just hates the hero and is so ruthless, but as the movie goes on, we actually learn, he actually is given some depth and complexity, we learn more about him, and we completely understand his reason motivation for hating Venom. So, I also gotta give a credit to that. But then again, this is another thing that, due to movies' pacing, is very much wasted. Because, as I said, this movie is slightly better from the first two, because the characters are actually more interesting here, but then they barely have any room to breathe. Like, there isn't really much scenes with them, in all honesty. Like, yeah, that would make the movie longer, but who cares? Sometimes long movies is very much what you need, because truly, this movie has better characters than the first two, better supporting cast, and while they aren't particularly perfect, they were interesting enough to make me invested in their story and character arc, but then again, the movie really wasted them. Which still is more I can say for the first two movies. Overall, Venom: The Last Dance is not a particularly good movie, but it's still an improvement over the first two. But again, it doesn't say much, because first two were awful. And it reinforces my very belief that I've really had ever since the very first Venom was announced. Venom is not a solo movie character. Venom very much works much better as an Spider-Man villain. And plus, he's not an idiot. He's supposed to be actually scary, intimidating, and awesome, like... But this guy certainly isn't it. Like, he's so stupid and so silly, oh my gosh, and he's certainly not a protagonist either, let alone a comedy protagonist. In fact, I'm going to say Eddie Brock Venom from Spider-Man 3 is a much better Venom than this guy. Speaking of which, yes, I actually very much love Spider-Man 3. Unpopular opinion, but I think this movie is very underrated. It's not as good as the first two Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, but I still very much love it and think it's very underrated. But then again, that's neither here or there. Overall, as I said, Venom The Last Dance is better than the first two, but at the end of the day, it doesn't say much. It still suffers from the many problems the first two had, with only reason being better is that the supporting characters are actually somewhat more interesting, plus the introduction of Newell is pretty cool. But other than that, not a particularly good movie. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for checking out this video. Press the like button, please subscribe to this channel, and if you are an American, go out and vote for whoever you want and do whatever you think is right. All I care is if you're a good person. And talk to you later. Bye.